Okay, so we're going to talk about the legacies of Greece. Some of these things that you had to discover for yourself when you did your city-state notes and slides, but this is just sort of a quick sum up of everything else that may have gotten left out. So just making sure that everybody's on the same page. First thing we got to do is talk about what is a legacy. A legacy is something that you pass on to future generations. So different traditions, skills, knowledge, things that are known, your culture is known for. So think about, what is your legacy? What are you leaving behind? Is it a good legacy? Um, or is it something that you don't necessarily want to be known for? Uh, when we talk about ancient Greece, we have to talk about a few different things. One of those is our art and architecture, one of our 6 characteristics of civilization, because Greece is a civilization. Um, so if we talk about literature. When Syracuse presents, they talk about the literary greats, and that includes those who write epics, which are just long poems about history, culture, gods, goddesses, a little bit different than just a simple myth of or mythology. These are usually based in some sort of historic event. So, like the Trojan War was written about in the Iliad, and the Odyssey. And these are long stories about the happenings of war, and a lot of the times they're really exaggerated over what is actually happening. That's why when we look at the Trojan War, we have to kind of filter out fact from fiction. Then, along the same lines, this Greek mythology, you got a chance to read a couple different myths the other day, and these are just the stories about gods and goddesses explaining how things came to be. Why do we have the seasons? Where did fire come from? Um, all of these different ideas. Um, Down here are the 12 major gods of Mount Olympus. Your main gods are Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Zeus being, kind of ruler of the heavens, Poseidon, the earth, and Hades, the underworld. And then everybody else who kind of falls into place as well in these different stories. Um, they all have kind of their own special roles to play, and they're still used today. Um, Another thing we have to talk about, Argos had the idea of theater as part of their city-state. Theater was a huge part of ancient Greece and something that we still carry a lot of the same sort of ideas today. Um, our Greek tragedy and comedy faces that we'll get to in a moment were actually uh, based off of the masks that actors would wear on stage. Mostly, number one, because actors were only male. Females were not allowed to act, and this would be a practice that would carry well into history, even to Shakespeare's day. Women were just not allowed on stage. It was a man's profession, and so actors would wear masks in order to portray women or a different age or perhaps a mood, similar to the happy and sad faces. The theaters that people would attend were usually carved into hillsides. Remember that Greece is full of mountains and hills, and so they would actually carve right into the hill and create sort of this arena seating. Wooden planks would be uh, laid across this area and used as a stage. And later on, these arenas would be used for other things, including Olympic Games. But they start off as these theaters um, for um, for plays. The Greeks were also the first ones to come up with the idea of tragedy versus comedy. So tragedy being about suffering and sadness. If we think, into Shakespeare, we think Romeo and Juliet. Everybody dies in that play. Nobody really, very few people survive. That's a very common theme of the tragedy. As far as comedies, these are usually plays with happy endings. Everybody ends up with, paired up with somebody else. They poke fun at certain types of people. Um, so we see this still today. I mean, think of the movies that you enjoy. Romantic comedies, sad, depressing movies, that maybe make you cry. Um, you know, think about what movies you enjoy. Where do they fall on this sort of spectrum? Also within this sort of area, we have architecture. And the Greeks thought of architecture as more than just kind of this art of the buildings, but a science in how buildings were created. Things were added on top of each other, so there was a bottom and a top piece, and they were added together to create a sturdy, long-lasting building. They're known for these three different types of um, columns. So we have the Doric style, a very clean, simple style, Ionic with the swirls at the top, and then the very ornate, detailed Corinthian columns. And these are things that we still see today. So the Parthenon on the Acropolis has a Doric style that you can see the clean columns. The Temple of Athena has Ionic, the swirls at the top. Even buildings that we have in our society, the Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C., the White House, all of these buildings are influenced by these styles by the Greeks of all of these columns. So we see that a lot in today's architecture as well. Another theme that we have to talk about are the Olympics and sports and how things are changing there. You all will have to create a game for our own Olympics. And these were originally held in honor of the gods, specifically Zeus. It began in 776 BCE, so before the Common Era, and they were held every 4 years, just the same as they are now. Now, today we have Summer and Winter Olympics, so they're kind of held every 2 years, but they used to be held every 4 years, and the best of the best from each of the city-states would come and compete for the honor of to represent their city-state. Now today we have countries all over the world. But before it would be, Sparta versus Athens versus Thebes, and all of the different city-states would give, the best athletes that they would have. Only men were able to participate. Women weren't even allowed to come and watch. It was a man's event. Excuse me. And we'll see that as a very common thread in ancient Greek times. They had to swear on oath that they weren't going to cheat. And usually when the Olympics happened, all warring city-states called a truce. So if you were at war with, Spartans and Athens were at war with each other, they would call a truce, come to the games, and kind of settle it that way, and then maybe go back to war after that. And if you were a winner, you were considered a hero. Some of the different games that were played, we still see today. Javelin, discus, boxing, all of these different ideas, all these different games, we still see very common today. You may have seen this in the other video, but the idea of a marathon also comes from ancient Greece. When the Greeks defeated the Persians, they defeated them at the city of Marathon. And one of the soldiers ran back to Athens, which is about 26 miles away, to announce the victory. When he got there, he died. um, so this is where we get the name of marathon. Just one more reason why I don't run them is because I don't care to die afterwards. um, Big theme with ancient Greece is the government. We talked about democracy very heavily, the idea that it's first developed in Athens, and it gives the power to the people. We still see it today. Obviously, our government in the U.S. is a democracy. And some of the democratic roots we still use today. So the idea of a constitution, who's allowed to vote, um, and the idea of being able to meet in front of a group of your peers, if you are committed, if you committed a crime, this trial by jury, hugely popular, um, and really brought out by Athens. This is where we first see it. Our last little bit of facts from ancient Greece and the legacies that they left behind is the idea of learning and philosophy. We see a lot of different people who have a huge influence in the way we think today. Excuse me. Philosophy is ideas and theories and wisdom and trying to figure out how the world works. So we start off with Socrates and the Socratic method, which we use a method, the Socratic circle, in a lot of our different discussions. So Socrates would teach Plato. Plato would be extremely interested in political science, so government. And Plato would then teach Aristotle, and Aristotle would expand the ideas of science and logic. Um, so the Socratic method is teaching through questions. So when I ask you why, when I ask questions in order to help you get the answers, or when other teachers ask you questions to help you get to the main idea, we're using the ideas behind the Socratic method. We're not just asking you questions to punish you. Um, the other science and reasoning, more by Aristotle, is our classification, what you may use in science, still used today. We like to classify things in a kind of orderly fashion. And then the scientific method, obviously a much more basic version, but this is where we first start to see the scientific method is in ancient Greece, being able to study things. And last but not least is the Hippocratic Oath, the idea that medical doctors have to uh, take this oath in order to really get their ability to practice medicine, um, and they still follow it today. And that also kind of comes out of ancient Greece in order to keep people safe. So those are your legacies of Greece. Um, there are many legacies, and they come from all over the Greek city-states. A lot of them are coming out of Athens, but others are coming from other uh, polis and being adopted by Athens. So that's why we see a lot of that. All right, so there you go. Thanks for watching.